This is the StoryTrust Media Podcast.
When you try to sound professional, sometimes you just end up sounding boring. This is the StoryTrust Media Podcast. And today I want to talk about the trap of professionalism in podcasting. Often we write a certain way, we talk a certain way because we think that's how others want us to sound. But the reality? Sometimes the looser, the better. Jargon is the enemy of good, catchy content, especially in 2026. Now, let me be clear. It's important to have a niche, to know who you're talking to. And if you have a podcast, say, about school bus driving, certainly you're going to want to use those terms and that jargon that school bus drivers want to hear about. And they know. And that's okay. But when we try to sound overly professional and polished and buttoned up because we think, oh, I'm on camera right now, that's when trust starts to erode and our content actually doesn't reach as far as we'd like it to. You know what I've noticed a lot with the people that I've worked with? And I think across all content creation, this is a truth that content creators come by, whether they're interviewing somebody or whether they're helping somebody create videos for their brand, whatever the case is. When a camera goes on and there's a red light, or when a microphone is put in front of somebody's face, they totally change, right? Immediately, for one thing, tighten up. Their vocabulary changes. They start to all of a sudden talk all like sophisticated and stuff. Why? I don't know. But I do know that it happens consistently with people that I work with. And it's very interesting, the idea of being camera shy, the idea of being microphone shy. I think it might have something to do with when we were kids and our parents pulled out a camera or took us to the professional photography shop, which they probably don't exist anymore, do they? And the photographer would get the camera out and we'd be in some fancy looking photo studio in front of some probably fake background of a fireplace, and you'd pretend to get along with your siblings for a few seconds while they counted down and said, "Say cheese." You had to look fake in that moment. Why? As a matter of survival, because you wanted to make sure that you got out of there as fast as you possibly could, and you knew mom was not going to be happy if you didn't get buttoned up and serious. So we have that ingrained in our minds. Now we're also very conscious about how people think about us. And so when the camera goes on, all of a sudden people playing with their hair, which, yeah, I still do because I care about my hair. It's not just a feminine quality. I care about that a lot. They might play with their shirt or do one of those because we care about how people perceive us. And that's natural. But in podcasting and when we're creating any sort of kind of content and we're trying to build trust through that content, sometimes that professionalism or that buttoned upness, for lack of a better term, can actually be the enemy. In fact, that stiffens us. That makes us less trustworthy. I mean, I think about the politician who gets up on the debate stage and starts talking. Certainly, there's something to be said for, and it's refreshing, actually, to be talking in a sophisticated terms and acting all professional. Imagine that. It'd be nice if more of our politicians did that, right? But we still want them to talk to us. We still want some sort of connection. That's what trust is built on. And so when it comes to trust through podcasting, the same thing is true. In fact, we're so concerned about our audience considering us to be so knowledgeable that we forget that we have to build a warm connection with them. Now, how do we build a warm connection with our audience? Through a podcast or through a video? People say, "Jon, how do you do? It's just a video." You can't really build that warm connection. You can get closer. You can get closer than you think. Number one, especially if it's a video podcast or any sort of video and people are watching, is eye contact. Eye contact is one of the most powerful ways to build a warm connection and establish trust with someone. That's number one. Number two, speak in their language. And again, going back to the school bus driver podcast example, we might think that speaking in their language is using all of their jargon. And certainly there's a piece of that where you can casually mention certain industry-specific terms or whatever the case may be, but talk like they talk. They probably don't talk in that jargon all the time. They probably don't talk in such a buttoned up way in complete sentences like you're trying to talk in on your podcast because you want to appear knowledgeable and understandably. So talk like your audience talks. What does that do? That signals to their brain that this is familiar. This is somebody who I want to get to know. This is a familiar conversation that I'm comfortable with. And they can picture themselves in a two-way conversation with you instead of just going to another seminar and sitting and listening. Podcasting was never meant to be another seminar. And then finally, number 3, other than, of course, eye contact and then talking like they talk, is making sure that the content that you're bringing, the quality of content is of the highest quality and is not wasting any of their time, right? You don't want to beat around the bush and not get to the point quickly. We talked about this in one of our earlier episodes too. Being concise is your friend in content, especially with attention spans lower than ever. Being concise is so important. People think that professionalism is, well, introducing myself and telling you all of my credentials so that you trust me. Spoiler alert, that's not how trust is built, but that's how people think trust is built. And then once I do that, then I can start to get into the actual meat of the content. But I can't deliver value to you until you trust me. The opposite is actually true. Typically, your audience can't trust you until you've delivered some sort of value to them. So cut the fat, trim the fat, get rid of all of the garbage and the nonsense up front that you're putting in your podcast, that you're putting in your content. It's one of the biggest mistakes I hear in podcasting is, hello, my name is so-and-so. And if you haven't met me yet, or you haven't listened to the show yet, I do this and that. And I've been a public speaker for this many years and worked here and there and here and there. And now I'm starting this podcast because nobody cares. Building trust is about not wasting their time. So make good eye contact. Talk like they do. And don't waste their time. Get to the point with quality content that helps them solve a problem that they have. A specific problem that somebody either creating content, like in my case, or driving a school bus, to use that silly example that I've been using. Now I'm actually curious if there's any podcasts for school bus drivers. I'm sure there is. There's a podcast for everything. Those are the 3 ways that you start to build trust. Drop the sophisticated talk. Drop the way that is ingrained in you that you think you need to be on camera, that you think you need to be behind a microphone. Because honestly, one of the best things we can learn in content creation is how to unlearn some of those habits that we don't even know how we just inherited. So get rid of all of those things. Easier said than done. Practice, because it will take practice, and your content will go to the next level. Because you'll build trust with your audience. And that's ultimately the bottom line. You need to build trust with those who you're talking to and with, and a real relationship with them. I'm Jon Goehring. This has been the StoryTrust Media Podcast. Thanks for checking out this episode. And if you got value from this, be sure to share it. Be sure to subscribe up on YouTube if that's where you're checking this out, or make sure you subscribe or follow, or whatever the term is. Now they change it all the time on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else. If you're interested in learning more about podcasting and content creation and what we do here at StoryTrust Media, StoryTrust.media is where you can grab some of my time for a free 30-minute content audit and see if working with us is the right fit for you. Thanks for checking this out. Again, we'll catch you next week for another episode of the StoryTrust Media Podcast.
Thank you for checking out the StoryTrust Media Podcast. Learn more and get in touch with Jon at StoryTrust.media.